the moment you've all been waiting for, and what I alluded to at the start of the show. It was a dark and stormy night, thus, it's the perfect time for a story. And no one better to kick it off than our resident lore master, Goliath the Dwarf, who will be telling us the tale of the Blood Elves.
Yes, let me tell you a story. Yes, gentlemen, tonight's story is one of great sadness, of exile, of corruption, of loss and destruction, but ultimately redemption and a happy ending. So, happy spoiler alert for that. But there's a lot of stuff we're going to be going through here because the Blood Elves, there's a reason that they're called Blood Elves, which we'll get to later on. But first, we are going to start, as we often do with these stories, by going way, way back. Not to the beginning of time or anything for once, but this is back to something that you guys, we've alluded to in previous episodes, and you've probably heard about and played through some things if you've done like the Demon Hunter solo adventures to unlock the cards and everything. That's right, we're talking about the War of the Ancients. 10,000 years before the events of the current World of Warcraft storylines. This is back in stuff that we talked a bit about, Sunken City, when we talked about Zinashari and all of that. So, pop quiz. What was the dominant race back at the time of the War of the Ancients?
The Ancients.
Night Elf Empire, to be specific.
Detention.
Although they were ancient because they had very long lifespans and eventually became immortal for a time. So yes, the Night Elf Empire ruled over the world under Queen Azshara, who was, as we have established previously, just the biggest egomaniac ever. Like we talked all about her in the Zinasari. And if for those of you listening, if you want more information, listen to our episodes with the Sunken City. We talked all about how she ended up dooming her people and transforming into the first Naga and serving old gods and demons and all of that stuff.
She is so vain, she probably thinks this lore episode is about her.
Well, it's not Azshara, so stick it to you. But it is the reason that we're getting started. So what we now know as Blood Elves used to just be regular Night Elves. What happened was that because the War of the Ancients, which as a recap happened because Azshara and all of her sorcerers were so into tapping the power of the arcane that they accidentally attracted all the demons, and then Azshara decided to just go and make a deal with them for more power for her. And basically, after the war ended, this is after there's this massive explosion, the Well of Eternity gets blown up so that demons can't come into the world anymore, and the single landmass of Kalimdor splits into the several landmasses that we know today. An event that was known as the Shattering. And there was just a lot of loss, a lot of death, a lot of catastrophe going on here. The world got split up and everything. And so a lesson that a large portion of the Night Elves take away from this. We're talking people who are like the leaders, like Malfurion and Tyrande and Illidan and all that stuff. Well, not Illidan quite so much here. But a lesson that a lot of them took away is arcane magic bad, druid magic good. Arcane magic started all this. No more arcane magic.
No, we can't do that.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. But it just so happened that several of the survivors were people who had been of that highborn caste of elves who knew all the arcane magic, and they're just like, no, you can't tell us to just stop doing this. Just assume that, because we got carried away and Azshara got all the evil on us and attracted demons and stuff, that it's all bad and gonna do it again. But so there was this back and forth, and there were several elves who just refused to stop practicing their arcane magic. And the Night Elves didn't want to have to kill them or anything, so they just exiled them. The leader had a last name that you guys would be familiar with, Sunstrider. His full name was Dathomir Sunstrider, who, interestingly, according to the lore, because the Night Elf culture revolved around the moon so much, their goddess Elune and everything, the Sunstrider name had actually been taken even before all this as kind of we're kind of countercultural to all this moon worship stuff. We're going like for sun in our name. That's literally something you can read in the Chronicle lore books.
How funny. Is that why
we're not like the other elves?
Yeah.
So is that why Kel'Thas, he says like, magic, my people are addicted to it?
This is the original root of that. We're going to get to exactly how all that started, but yes,
Okay.
it's a major feature of the Blood Elves as they develop later on. So what happens is the highborn exiles who insist on being able to practice magic of the arcane and studious type, not the hippie hanging out with Cenarius type. That's how they view it, at least.
Far out,
That's funny. That's great.
They travel across to what we now know as the Eastern Kingdoms. And they go through a lot of hardship there. So much hardship. We're talking like, nearly freezing and starving to death in snowy mountains, constantly having to fight back hordes of savage trolls, mainly the Amani tribe, which is going to be their main antagonist for quite some time, honestly. Humans aren't even really a thing at this point. It's going to take a long time before humans develop enough and eventually team up and learn magic from elves and stuff. But at this point, it's like an elves versus trolls thing. And this is actually why the Blood Elves look so different, because they lost their taller stature. So they're shorter than Night Elves. And they lost their purple color. Initially, this was more implied that like they got paler, but then Blizzard decided to kind of retcon that in a way because they wanted to allow people in World of Warcraft to have like any race, skin, and color they wanted. So technically, there are like black and Asian looking Night Elves and stuff, and it's not really a thing that's a concern in the lore. But the main thing is that they got so cold and tired and sick and hungry that somehow that stopped them from being purple. I don't know the biology of how that works, but yeah. So eventually they managed to get to a place in the north of the Eastern Kingdoms area and end up founding the city of Silvermoon there. They are able to erect some great waystones and this magic field that helps to keep the area safe and actually helps to turn it into this realm of eternal springtime, which is why it's just like it's always nice there. There is never any winter in any place that is anywhere near Silvermoon City, honestly. There are a couple of native creatures that they domesticated there, which you'll recognize from some pretty frequently or at least original Hearthstone cards. The Dragonhawk is one of the OG cards there. We have the young Dragonhawk, and then later on in Old Gods, we had like the corrupted Dragonhawk from the Grand Tournament. That's what it's called. We have the Dragonhawk Rider, and these are basically domesticated into their what almost becomes known as like a cultural or in World of Warcraft a racial mount. They're fierce, fire-breathing predators, and they had actually previously been tamed by the local Amani trolls, which is why there's you remember Janalai, the Dragonhawk Loa. Yep, exactly. And that was something they'd already done, and the Blood was like, okay, maybe not everything that these trolls do is absolutely horrible and to be avoided. These Dragonhawks seem like a good idea. The other one was what we know as the Hawkstriders, and we have cards like the Hawkstrider Rancher and stuff. They are relatives of the Tail and Plain Striders. They're a bit more of a showy. They're like the poodles of that family or something, you know, or the parrots, like the colorful plumage and all of that stuff. You guys know we have like the Dark Moon Strider cards. We have like the Lost Plain Strider all the way back from Goblins and Gnomes, and they're all in the same general family. Hawkstriders are valued for their trustworthiness and speed. The Blood Elves said that they embodied the inherent splendor of the Force within the Blood Elven kingdom, and they are really fierce protectors. Like if you have a loyal Hawkstrider mount, then no one wants to mess with you because they will. If it looks like you're in trouble, they will go at whatever seems to be threatening you with sharp bill and claws and all of that stuff right there. So things are going pretty decent. Yes.
I always thought of the Dragonhawks as looking like chocobos, or Hawkstriders rather, as looking like chocobos, but World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not that familiar with a bunch of Final Fantasy stuff. I've definitely heard the term chocobo tossed around, and I've seen a couple images. And yeah, it's basically the rideable bipedal flightless bird, like your ostrich or your emu or cassowary, but with parrot-like plumage. Yeah. So yeah, they're pretty cool there. And so yeah, that is basically the development of Silvermoon. The Sunstrider line of kings lasts for quite a while there, and they have their occasional skirmish with the trolls. It's not really that much of a problem in the end. Like, they still stand strong and whatnot. But the source of all of their power, because like they want to have something like that old Well of Eternity that happened way back when. Now, what happened was that while the Well of Eternity itself was destroyed, before that happened, our old buddy Illidan Stormrage took a couple of secret vials that he filled with the magical water and kind of stashed them away there. In fact, that was actually why he was later imprisoned for 10,000 years, because he tried making his own Well of Eternity.
That's right. When it was all, what was it called? When it was all like imploding, right? The maelstrom was happening, and he's sitting here like, they're like, we gotta go, it's gonna blow. He's getting his like little vials of it to stick in his pocket before he runs off.
Exactly. And no. And so that's why they're like, he's doing the exact thing that got us in trouble in the first place. Lock him away. And they just like, for some reason, they don't destroy the files. I guess they decide maybe it could be useful at some point or whatever. But they do have like a massive tree to grow over the Well of Eternity to make sure no one can't get ahead of it. And that's a story for another time. But what basically, before all of these elves were exiled, old Sunstrider nicked one of those bottles from Illidan's secret stash there. And when they found Silvermoon City, they make a new font of magic called the Sunwell, our first ever neutral spell in Hearthstone. And it is the font of magic that just like kind of permeates the air around them. And this is the sort of thing of why they are addicted to magic. They are used to living in a world where the very atmosphere around them is saturated with magic provided by the Sunwell. This is actually just a small aside here, but there's actually a similar problem that a whole other group of elves who managed to survive the Great Cataclysm, they had a thing called the Night Well. It's like this shield that protected them and everything. And like for centuries, they had no moon or sun or stars or anything to survive purely off the night well, to the extent that if you're exiled from the city away from it, you literally just wither up because your body needs that magic. They adapted to need it. The Blood Elves aren't quite that strong of a problem necessarily, but it's definitely up there. And you might think, well, you have this nice Sunwell, everything. Why would this addiction be a problem? It literally permeates the air around it. Enter our good old friend Arthas Menethil. Working for the Lich King right now. He's a Death Knight. He's not the Lich King quite yet. The whole March of the Lich King is more of those Hearthstone fanfic things where they merge all of his being the full Lich King and commanding the Scourge with the idea of back when he assaulted Silvermoon City. So at this point, within the actual story, he's not the Lich King yet. Mm-hmm. But does anyone remember why he is going to Silvermoon City at all?
Well, he wanted to get the Sunwell, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
I sent you this comic. I was looking for images, and I found the funniest. Like, I remember this distinctly from Warcraft 3, right? When you are playing as Arthas and you're trying to get in to get to the Sunwell, into Silvermoon, and you're fighting against Sylvanas. But hold on. Let me pull up the image here because it's funny.
Yes.
Yes, he really wants to get in.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, but surprise, you know, the elves have the city under like super lockdown, so.
Oh, yes, lots of levels of security. Remember those waystones that we mentioned before? They literally provide magical barriers or protection around all of Eversong Woods is the name of the kind of eternal springtime forest that is surrounding the Silvermoon City, all of the Blood Elven lands here. And so what happens is that Arthas is on orders from the Lich King to use the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. They have his ashes, and they're like, okay, so we could just resurrect him like normal, but this is an opportunity to make him like the uber powerful Lich who can be really, really useful here. So we're going to need Sunwell magic. It's the only thing that's powerful enough to be able to make him into the uber powerful Lich. And so what happens is that, well, there's a lot of different parts of the assault, honestly, but basically Arthas and the Scourge are able to just use their overwhelming numbers. Like, you throw down a Scourge, then like it doesn't matter because every enemy that the Scourge kills is just raised up to become a new member of the ranks, which of course we know is what happened to Sylvanas. We've talked about her story already, so we won't go into too much detail, but she had the position of Ranger General, which basically means that she was the military leader, and so she is trying to lead the defense and having the various ambush attacks and trying to, you know, hold off. And there's actually 3 levels of security, like these 3 different elf gates. And Arthas manages to, you know, get through all of them through one way or another. And eventually he's able to strike down Sylvanas. And because he's resentful that she's been annoying and slowing him down, he raises her as the Banshee. And it's actually her being turned against her people that really breaks the spirit of all of the other high elves. Remember, they're high elves at this point. They were the Highborn, and so they kept that name for quite a while. This was the High Elf Empire, but it's not going to be for long. Frankly, this assault devastates the High Elf population. Like, there is a very small percentage that actually survive there. This is like massive, not quite genocide on this entire race, as they're just ransacked by these armies of undead who want the greatest treasure, the font of magic. Arthas wouldn't have been able to get to the Sunwell if it wasn't for a disgruntled magister named Dar'Khan Drathir, who is our warlock legendary for March of the Lich King. He was basically really spiteful, and he's like, I should have access to the Sunwell. I should have the great power. I should have the fancy titles, and they're keeping it from me. And Arthas is like, if you just betray them all, well, we'll let you have all that power, and you can take over. Naturally, Arthas just killed him after he stopped being useful, because why should an evil death knight keep his word, But yeah, that is basically what happened. They used the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad to his ashes, and this corrupts the Sunwell. This evil magic here. So basically, that is going to be really, really bad for all of the high elves. It's going to mess them up a lot. So the king was actually killed by Arthas in a duel, and his son, the prince Kael'thas Sunstrider, was actually studying in Dalaran at the time, but he hears what's going on and he rushes back, and he's unfortunately too late to help defend against Arthas. Arthas is already gone at this point, but what he does do is he leads the mission they decide that, regrettably, the only thing they can do is to destroy the Sunwell because it's been corrupted. And it's like, having no Sunwell really, really sucks, but it's better than having this corrupted Sunwell. And the dark energies were literally already killing the survivors, and there's not very many elves left anyway, so you don't want that happening. And so they destroy it. They basically kind of magically blow it up. But here's where the writing gets a little bit weird here. Some of the remnants of the Sunwell's magic remains. They were collected by a red dragon who was disguised. He just looked like another elf. He's like one of those things where dragons like to have a mortal visage. His name was, okay, can I pronounce this? Korialstrasz, I think. And he basically took the remnants of the magic, like the few pure remnants left, and he turned them into a lady who was imprinted with false memories and thought she was a real human. No. But she's actually the embodiment of Sunwell magic. Any questions so far?
Is she touchable? Is she see-through?
Yeah, she's not ethereal or anything. She's a solid physical person.
Implanted with a backstory of her own life.
Exactly. She thinks that she's a regular person. I kid you not. She actually ends up having a bit of a romance with the blue dragon Caligos. And eventually kind of figures out who and what she is, and she's as surprised as anybody else. She's going to come to the story again later. Okay. But in the meantime, Kael'thas has, as the de facto ruler, the heir, the only royalty left and everything, he has a lot of decisions that he needs to make, including some vacancies that need to get filled, because Sylvanas was the ranger general, and she's kind of gone now. So this is where our hunter legendary from March of the Lich King comes in, Halduron Brightwing. Not the fairy dragon Brightwing. We are friends. No, this is a different guy who happens to have the name Brightwing in his name there. And he basically just takes over as the new Ranger General. Kael'thas decides that he needs to go out and, do some fighting to try to, get rid of this scourge that's destroying everything. And while he's gone, he appoints Lor'themar Theron as the Regent Lord. So he's looking after the city and the people, and Kael'thas leads a full 15% of the remaining population in a joint effort with the Alliance to reclaim the fallen city of Lordaeron, which you might remember was Arthas' city that he grew up in, but later destroyed when he killed his father and just like absolutely devastated it in the name of the Scourge and all of that stuff. It's at this point where our buddy Kael'thas ends up under the abusive leadership of an extremely racist human general named Garithos, who really hates all non-humans and is literally only in charge because every other competent officer above him died. And so he's just like, I'm in charge now because I'm next in rank, even though he is absolutely horrible.
Okay, Patches.
And basically, because of the situations that serving under this general puts Kael'thas and his high elf forces in, he ends up being forced into accepting help from Lady Vash, the Naga. And when Garithos comes in and he sees that the elves are working with Naga, he's like, aha, I need even more evidence why I should never trust you. And he locks them away in jail. But Lady Vash comes to the rescue and she's like, hey, I work for this guy named Illidan. If you join us, then I'll bet he could solve your magic problem. And Kael'thas doesn't really see any other options at this point. So he's like, yeah, sure. I'll meet this Illidan guy. And ends up traveling to Outland and helping Illidan conquer the Black Temple and set up his base of operations there under the promise that Illidan is going to teach them some techniques to help to substitute for all of this loss of magic. Because, as I said, they don't have a corrupted Sunwell anymore, but they have literally nothing, and they're starting to kind of wither away because the magic is like a source of nourishment for them. They need it as much as food because it's become such a strong part of their being. In the meantime, Illidan has, through a set of circumstances, ended up pretending to be working for the demon lord Kil'jaeden because he wants to learn the inner secrets in order to destroy the Legion. Kil'jaeden at this point is dealing with the fact that the Lich King is openly rebelling against him, and so he tells Illidan to go and send some forces to be able to, deal with the Lich King right here. And this is where we get that iconic image of Arthas and Illidan fighting. Which, do we have a copy of that to show, Nate? Yeah. Yes, there we go, right there. And from this, we get a different version of Scourge and Undead, actually. We get the Darkfallen, also known as the Sand Lane, because a lot of the Blood Elf forces that Kael'thas sends in to help Illidan, well, they end up dying and getting resurrected as undead, but a very particular type of undead. The Lich King kind of looks at them. He's like, I'm feeling creative today. I'm going to try out something new. I know. I'll invent vampires. So yeah, vampires technically exist in World of Warcraft, just kind of in this very specific way. And maybe there's kind of other versions. Like, we have the Menethil and like the Revendreth. That's technically an afterlife and stuff. So yeah,
Murloc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is a lot of fun. Yeah. But yeah, that is how
Don't tempt
we
me.
get. So we have the basically ruled over by Blood Queen Lanethal, who was one of Kael'thas's generals. And then there's the Blood Princes like Khaliseth, Valinar, Taladrim, and they eventually become bosses in the Icecrown Citadel raid and all of that stuff. But basically, this is where the Sand Lane come from. And then, of course, over time, there's other Blood Elves who get resurrected and Scourge as just kind of normal undead in the sense, like, maybe they're ghouls and you wouldn't even know they were elves, or they become Death Knights, and so they're basically just cool elf-looking Death Knights and stuff. But
So we have our corpse taker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
I love that card.
And yeah, I'd say at this point, the elves are just in a really bad place. This is the part where they change from being high elves to blood elves in honor of the blood that was shed when so many were lost. So whenever you hear blood elves or Cinderai in their language, it is very specifically like they are as a race defined by this tragedy. They reinvented themselves, and to an extent their culture adapted and stuff, and they're still trying to rebuild Silvermoon. There's a lot more that happens, but we're going to take a short intermission before we continue on with where all of that learning new magic techniques and stuff took them. In the meantime, we have another song to share with you guys.
This is going to be the first time I have heard this.
Time for the 7th inning stretch.
Can y'all hear it okay?
Mm-hmm. This one's about one of my favorite classes. I bet you never heard that warlock Gul'dan say, for ultimate power, what price would you pay? Selling your soul, or would you do with me? If I gave you destruction of your enemies? Well, I just said no in a storm wind a minute and shoot him away. Though I might now regret it, he just rode away on his dread steed. But now I've reconsidered signing the dark deed. I should have been a warlock. I should have learned to wield the bell. And I'd be summoning demons and destroying my enemies with shadow spells, stealing the demon souls like Henry thought and lock, chanting those doom rituals. Oh, I should have been a warlock. I might have had a void walker with a funny name, running wild, casting curses, siphons and trains, playing the cause of cataclysmic danger, making dark deals with mysterious strangers. Seek out the Kari pits. Haven't you been told? Discards and sacrifices grant power untold, tapping life, throwing nymphs out to be torn apart, with a fire in my eye and a curse in my heart. I shouldn't have been a warlock. I shouldn't have learned to wield the bell. I'd be summoning demons and destroying my enemies with shadow spells, stealing the name and souls like Henry thought had been locked, chanting those doom rituals. Oh, I should have been a warlock. Should have been a warlock. I should have learned to wield the bell. I'd be summoning demons and destroying my enemies with shadow spells, stealing the name and souls like Henry thought had been locked, chanting those doom rituals. Oh, I should have been a warlock. I should have been a warlock. Yeah, I should have been a warlock.
I used to live in a little place called Alberta where everybody listens to country music. So yes, I know that song.
I
Well
used to
done.
live in the Twisting Nether, so I was very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
Part of my ongoing quest to eventually have one about every Hearthstone class. We'll see how long that takes. But
Oh, yeah.
So, before we continue,
Well-
are there any lingering questions or clarifications anyone wants about what we talked about so far with Blood Elves?
When do we get a warlock hero portrait with a cowboy hat on?
I can't
there
answer
is-
that.
In Battlegrounds, there is
Yep.
a Cowboy Nazoth, which is
Oh, you're
pretty kicking
right.
rad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what. Bring that to constructed.
That's what I was gonna say, right? Here.
Howdy.
Does it say that?
No.
No, the Battlegrounds don't have voice lines, just the
Some
random
of them
emotes
do.
you can do.
Some of them do, but they're
Oh,
the
yeah.
like legendary ones. Yeah.
Right.
Oh
Crazy
gosh,
ones.
I love when they've got like special, I don't know, special voice lines. That'd be so great if they had one for the Cowboy Nazoth. Instead of yo ho ho, it'd be like yeehaw.
Howdy.
Oh yeah. I recall that now.
I should have had it up during the song. I forgot all about it. That's great. Good times.
Well done. Well done.
Thank
And
you.
how?
Thank you very
And
much.
howdy. Okay. So, where do we resume?
Well, we resume with the elves dealing with the magic problems in a few different ways. Now, through Illidan, Kael'thas was able to learn what some techniques called magic siphoning, that he was able to send back some emissaries to Silvermoon and teach the elves who were still living there, trying to rebuild the city, exactly how to do it. Basically, this is where they can siphon the life force from living creatures, which is a bit sketchy on its own there, honestly. But it's kind of all that they really have at this point. Also, this is around the time where the Blood Elves actually end up joining the Horde, ironically, through Sylvanas. Because at this point she has gained her free will and is ruling the Forsaken from the Undercity, and she, in spite of what she might say, she still has some lingering connections to her home and people, even though like they kind of previously wanted nothing to do with her because like they're terrified of her. Can you blame them? And basically, through her acting as the ambassador, they end up joining the Horde. They would have, like previously, they had ties with the Alliance, but the whole Garithos thing and the Alliance didn't really come to their aid, and suffering the abuse under the generals and all that stuff. They're like, nah, we're kind of finished working with humans right here. We'll join this other like fellow group of outcasts because we need allies, and this is kind of all that we have right now. But the mana siphoning wasn't the only way that they decided to gain powers. There's also a particular way that the paladins did stuff. Because before, so the way that paladin and priest, holy magic with the light, tends to work, it's the way it's supposed to work, is that it's something that comes through faith and devotion and confidence that you're doing the right thing. But after going through so much tragedy, most of the Blood Elf clerics and paladins, they really, really lost faith because they're like, Light, why didn't you give us salvation when we were in so much trouble? Which is a fair question. But basically, they still wanted to be able to wield those holy powers. So another gift that Illidan and Kael'thas had sent back was a captured Naru. Anyone remember what a Naru is?
They have light. They're are they those shard things?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like from our whole Barons and Stormwind and Alterac, that whole quest about assembling the shards of the Naru. They are
Yeah.
beings who are like made of pure light there. They radiate so
Yes.
much holy magic. And can be a real pain when they become cards, apparently, because I have I've had some difficulties with Priest resurrecting that particular Naru quite a bit. But at any rate, this one is named Muru. And it's just M apostrophe U-R-U. Muru. And
They should make a Murloc version called Moo.
I can totally see that happening. Like it's been canonized in the recent Dragonflight expansion that there is an alternate timeline of Azeroth where literally everything is Murloc. There's a Murloc Deathwing, there's a Murloc Varian and Thrall, and like we've already had like some Hearthstone portraits of like Murloc alterations. Anything can be a Murloc apparently, but yeah, for this particular thing, the group of Blood Elf Paladins that form siphoning the holy power from this Naru become known as the Blood Knights. And their leader is Lady Liadrin, who been a portrait for a long time before she was a card. She was that one where if you just play enough World of Warcraft free trial, then you would get her.
That's how I got it.
Yeah.
Level 20, I think you had to get to or something.
Yeah. It's how I first learned about her before I learned about more of the story. I'm like, who is this Lady Liadrin character? Is like this random other paladin. So yeah, she was they were technically paladins, but they weren't the nicest paladins. They weren't. They were literally painfully tearing their holy magic away from a being who kind of needed it. Because one thing you may remember from the Hearthstone story is that if a Naru ends up being stripped entirely of its holy magic, it becomes a destructive void creature, which they didn't know at the time. But it's going to play a bit of a part later on, sort of. Now, we also have a couple other factions that are constantly kind of splitting up among the elves.
Can I ask you a quick question, though? So she's got this big sword, right? Does it have? Is this anything special? You know, they all have some kind of special, like, weapons with names and all that.
I don't know of any particular name or lore behind her weapons. That's just... I think in this case, it's Blizzard just leaning into the really cool art for a major character like that. Yeah, sorry to disappoint, but this is one case where I don't have anything special about a weapon.
And these Blood Knights and Blood Elves and stuff, like they really seem to be with like the yellow and the red. Is there like a thing there?
Well, again, this all goes back to it's Sunwell and like that, and all the gold. It's very Radica is always kind of one of their colors, but yes, really leaning into the blood theme was definitely kind of solidified it as a major color in their heraldry and such. And yeah, it's something that they just kind of embrace. They also really embrace the concept of like the rebirth. Phoenixes are kind of their symbol. And you'll have, eventually we'll mention Alar and such. So Phoenixes are something that Blood Elf mages might have kind of specialized in conjuring over, say, the human mages of Dalaran and whatnot. So it's definitely, as I said, it did influence their culture quite a bit. So getting into a couple other categories or factions of elves, we have the Sun Fury. These are specifically the loyalist forces of Prince Kael'thas, Sunstrider here. They set up this base in a place called Netherstorm in the Outlands while they're helping work with Illidan here. And it's basically... There's this old Draenei spaceship that kind of broke into pieces a long time ago. And the Draenei on Azeroth, they live in one of those small pieces that's known as the Exodar, but there are other ones that are still in Outland. And the ones that Kael'thas and his stooges set up shop in is known as Tempest Keep. And they basically have like Illidan's like, okay, yep, you guys can kind of do your own thing right here. But eventually Kael'thas really lost faith in Illidan because Illidan was very, very paranoid and very, very secretive. He's like, I don't know if there are any disguised demons who are listening on our plans, so I'm just not going to tell my allies anything that I am going to do here. And Kael'thas keeps coming to him with, okay, where's that magic you promised? I'm sure the siphoning was a good start, but we really need a working, lasting, sustainable solution right here. And Illidan is too busy with his secret project that he won't tell anybody about, which is the Demon Hunters. I suppose Kael'thas might know something about the Demon Hunters because I'm sure he had to have a bit of permission from Kael'thas for Illidan to recruit some of the Blood Elves into the Demon Hunter ranks. But really, it's like his top secret weapon, his army of the ultimate demon killers. He's just like, I don't want any of this leaking out. And Kael'thas becomes so frustrated with him that he abandons Illidan altogether and ends up working for Kil'jaeden, the demon lord who Illidan was previously pretending to work for and now is very obviously not. And Kil'jaeden wants to get back at him and all that stuff. So we'll put a pin in that. We have one more little break-off section because as Kael'thas is becoming more and more paranoid and corrupt, a lot of his followers lose faith in him. This is a group that becomes known as the Scryers. So we have our Star Scryer card back from the Ashes of Outland expansion, and the Apexis Smuggler qualifies as one of them as well by the uniform and the art. And this group actually is led by ones who had a vision of another Naru who is in a ruined Draenei city on Outland called Shattrath. This is Adele. You may recall there's cards like Hand of Adele, the Paladin cards. And so
I was thinking like hello from the other side.
And basically, they kind of have a bit of a conversion. They're like, yeah, okay, this Kael'thas is going on the deep end here, like he's serving demons and all that. No, we're gonna go and actually do some good and help to rebuild the city and make life better in this land. And it just so happens that this faction that's defecting away from Kael'thas has most of the brightest scholars and magisters. So who are like, the big mage people. And so it's a really big loss to Kael'thas's forces. Like all of his best people are leaving. It's kind of like how all the top German scientists like Albert Einstein kind of immigrated to America as they saw that the political situation was not going so great. And so Germany is suddenly out a lot of the greatest scientists and stuff. That's basically what is happening to Kael'thas right now. He's getting deserters going on here. Now it's at this point that the Warcraft expansion, first expansion really, the Burning Crusade happens. So the Burning Legion sees all the stuff that Illidan is doing, and they're like, okay, how can we stop him or at least slow him down? I know, we'll trick all of the people who he has alienated in the past, which is like almost everybody, especially back on Azeroth, that he is actually just this power-hungry demon tyrant who is working with the Legion, and they'll fight the battle for us. It's that pit your enemies against each other strategy. So the Legion very strategically staged fake assaults on Azeroth from the Dark Portal, reopening it and connecting it to Outland. in order to lure the forces of the Alliance and Horde over there. And then they see all the very sketchy stuff that Illidan is doing. We don't have time to go into all of this, but basically Illidan may have been having the noble goal of destroying the Endless Legion that wants to extinguish all life in the universe, but he was so ends justified the means that there is plenty of things that would probably qualify as war crimes, really, that the Alliance and Horde see and like, yeah, this guy needs to get stopped. They don't know that he's doing it in the name of a greater cause, and maybe they wouldn't even care because he's doing things like draining an entire ecosystem and destroying its Zangramarsh in order to get enough water to feed his armies, purposely corrupting fell orcs to be like mindless brutes to use as soldiers, and just like a lot of stuff that's pretty strong evidence that this guy needs to get stopped here. As part of the assaults and exploring Outland, they end up in Netherstorm, the Alliance and Horde do. And this is where we get the Tempest Keep dungeon. This is where Alar is a dungeon boss that we fight, as well as Astromancer Solarian, who they don't really have very much individual lore. This was in the days before Blizzard decided to put whole lore entries in the dungeon guides about bosses, just like a boss was just something that you fought and maybe had a few words. So we don't know very much about Astromancer Solarian, unfortunately, except that she was a Blood Elf mage who decided to really focus on tapping into the void. And the prime version that you draw from the card is one of my favorites, not only because the effect is really fun and it only targets the opponents if possible, which I really love, but that it really matches this becoming this void creature that is a feature. It's a boss mechanic in the Tempest Keep dungeon. So that's kind of about all there is in terms of how that dungeon factors in to the Hearthstone cards that we have. But at the end, Kel'Thas himself is the final boss, and he seemingly dies, but he doesn't. This is frankly where
Kael'thas after all.
This is where a meme originates because when you face him later on as a boss again, he says, "I know what you're thinking, but Tempest Keep was merely a setback." And so you may notice in some of the flavor cards, in some of the cards' flavor text, there are references to like blank was merely a setback, and that is all a joke of the meme of that Kel'Thas is like gone, but they realized they wanted him as a boss again, so they brought him back in this spell corrupted form.
Somehow Kael'thas returned.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, at this point, Kel'Thas has decided to return to his homeland. He's going back to Azeroth. He's going back to Silvermoon and Quel'Thalas, which I don't know if I mentioned. Quel'Thalas is just the general name that they have for the lands ruled over by the Blood Elves. And he decides that, okay, we're going to take the Sunwell here, and we are going to turn it into a portal so our Lord and Savior Kil'jaeden can come over to Azeroth, and we will conquer in his name, and yada, yada, yada. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, but that Sunwell was destroyed. Well, it turns out that that this is where they figured out that the Sunwell magic was around, but it was a lady, and like managed to get a hold of the Naru that previously the Blood Knights had been siphoning, and using those together, the plan is to create this ritual that will kind of reinvigorate the Sunwell and turn it into a portal for Kil'jaeden to come through. this is a point where Lady Liadrin and the Blood Knights kind of realize that they did a real whoopsie in torturing this Naru and siphoning its power. They repent and decide to ally with the Draenei and other forces in the Alliance and Horse to oppose Kael'thas, coming in with yet another new type of elves who are called the Fellblood. He just really infused them with Fel. It's kind of like how orcs used to be just like kind of more regular creatures, but they turned green after drinking demon blood and getting bloodlust and all that stuff.
Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah, this is kind of similar with elves just getting infused by Fel. And a Hearthstone original example we have of this is Valdris Felgorge, who, again, is an original character, but he's very much like what a Fellblood elf is here. So that's a lot of different type of elf factions we talked over. Any clarifications needed?
Well, I've got a
we
note
all
here
good?
that says that Calicos is part of this. And what does the Shattered Sun cleric have to do with that? I mean, I see the
Yes.
example because the green skin, right?
That's actually just the lighting on the card,
Oh,
the Shattered
there you
Sun
go.
Cleric. But yeah, the Shattered Sun Offensive is what the new group is called, with the Blood Knights who team up with the Draenei and the other forces in opposition to Kael'thas's corruption. They want to restore Silvermoon, and they also team up with those Scryers that we mentioned earlier. And yeah, they're all called the Shattered Sun Offensive. This is a part where Caligos comes in because he was actually the one who, as I said, they managed to figure out that the magic was a lady and actually had like a romantic interest with her. Caligos, unfortunately, does not have the greatest track record when it comes to his attempts at getting a girlfriend. He had a thing with Jaina for a while, but they had to break up because she just could not get over her hatred of the Horde and wanting to be like, a crazy powerful mage. She's like, I can't live with this. So yeah, it's but this was his first one, and like she ends up sacrificing herself when she realizes, I am the magic, we can kill Jaden. So when Kil'jaeden is coming out of the portal, because like he is really, really powerful. He's like second in command to Sargeras himself here. Normally, your average adventurer could not defeat him, but she manages to weaken him enough that he becomes a beatable raid boss. And then using her power, she manages to actually so it's releasing the full power of the Sunwell on him, and then it's just she's gone. But at the end, the Draenei prophet Velen is able to use the remaining power, and Lady Liadrin is helping out with this as well, and the remaining spark of the Naru Muru to recreate the Sunwell that is now a font of both arcane and holy magic. So it even lives up to the idea of being a Sunwell even more. It's like glowing with holy light and stuff as well. So this is like a whole new rebirth for the Blood Elves. They have a Sunwell back. They're not dealing with this magic addiction stuff anymore because it's just all around. And yeah, it's a really great new sign for them. The Blood Knights are now able to be able to get holy magic naturally without needing to dominate the light. And things are overall looking pretty good for the Blood Elves here. They even are having more integration into Dalaran and working with other mages, and things are going well in the Horde and stuff. And then an expansion called Mist of Pandaria happens, where a guy named Garrosh Hellscream ends up taking over the Horde. Garrosh is also extremely racist because he is an orc supremacist. And he is like, all you others, especially like elves, because you're like really prissy looking in comparison to orcs and stuff. You don't belong in my horde. And he's like really brutal and stuff, to the extent that Lor'themar Theron and the Blood Elves are actually considering leaving the Horde and going to the Alliance. Like,
Wow.
it's that bad. However, Garrosh has some loyal Blood Elven spies among the, let's see, what were they called again? Yes, the Sun Reavers. There's so many Blood Elf factions right here. But yes, these ones are known as the Sun Reavers. And some of them are very loyal to Garrosh, and they managed to help him steal some very powerful artifacts that were being kept safe in Dalaran. At this point, Jaina is actually the Archmage of the Kirin Tor. So she is in charge of Dalaran. And remember, at this point, she has had her entire city of Theramore completely destroyed by Garrosh and the Horde using basically the magic equivalent of an atomic bomb. So she is really full on the Horde hate right now. And when there is evidence that the Blood Elves are using Dalaran to be able to get powerful magical artifacts to the Horde and are betraying Dalaran's official neutrality, she goes ballistic. She purges Dalaran of all Blood Elves. Like, it's either die or be exiled or jailed or whatever. The leader is a fellow by the name of Aethys Sun Reaver, who the Sun Reaver group was named after. And if you've played the Jaina Book of Heroes, you will remember that as, I believe, the final fight.
I believe so,
yeah. Yeah. And so this is like drives the Blood Elves right back to the Horde. And Varian gives her a very strong talking to. He's like, we were in negotiations. They were going to join us. You should have consulted with me first, because the entire race is not to blame for what these few did. Go figure. But yeah, that just solidifies them back with the Horde, unfortunately. Unfortunately, being under Garrosh. The Horde goes back and forth between having good leaders who care about honor and complete warmongers. Because, I mean, the story needs villains at some points, and not everything can be an old god or a demon lord. Sometimes you just need a warmonger to fight. Now, an important aspect, another faction that we haven't mentioned, the Blood Elves, is the Reliquary. This is basically the Horde equivalent of the League of Explorers, and is why it is kind of almost an antagonist-seeming card in the League of Explorers set, or adventure, because they're basically, the groups butt heads quite a bit. The League of Explorers is based in Ironforge, so it's very alliance-centric overall, though they welcome pretty much anybody. And the Reliquary is very much about unearthing magical artifacts to increase power and study them. And so the two butt heads quite a bit, honestly. Thankfully, there's not very much that's going on in current lore. Currently, as things stand right now, and the Dragonflight expansion, the Horde and Alliance are at peace, and actually the Reliquary and the League of Explorers merge together into this joint expedition where they're all working together to learn more about dragons, which I think is really cool. And that is about where the Blood Elves stand right now. They've gone through a lot, but things are overall looking up. They're reintegrating with more of the races and factions of Azeroth, and doesn't look like there's going to be any major corruption or genocide on them again anytime soon. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. You never know when a plot twist is coming.
Plot twist.
Plot twist.
Good card.
That's funny. We did have a couple of cards that we skipped over. I don't know how much it changes things, but we had a couple of our legendaries. So Grand Magister Romath and Astalor.
Yes. So as the Grand Magister, basically Romath is the third important leader. So as we said, we have the Ranger General, and we have Lor'themar Theron, who is the Regent Lord. Basically, as the Grand Magister, Romath is the head mage of all the Blood Elves. He's in charge of like the magical research, and he was actually the one, along with our other fellow right there, who is very much an annoyance by several people who have been with the Man of Thirst used so much against them that they had to increase cost for the card. But I enjoy him. I enjoy playing him. But they're actually the ones who were figured out the start of the Blood Knights. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So they figured out that we can magically siphon stuff from the Naru here. But yeah, basically, as Magisters, they're in charge of any and all things magic within Blood Elf culture.
Okay.
Very cool. And then there was a part, I guess, so when we were talking about Outland and we have the Sun Fury and the Scryers, then there was another section talking about Illidan recruiting Blood Elves.
Yeah, those are the ones who became the Demon Hunters. So when we have characters like Kain Sun Fury. He is the main one that we have who is a named legendary card, but we have others who are like the Glavebound Adept, the Crimson Sigil Runner, the Fell Summoner. Basically, if it's a Demon Hunter and they don't have purple skin, then it is a Blood Elf. Of course, Hearthstone they decide that they want to have Blood Elves, Demon Hunters of other races aside from Knight and Blood Elves, but lore-wise, those are the only races that actually became it. If you want to be a Demon Hunter in World of Warcraft, if you're playing Horde, it has to be a Blood Elf. If you're playing Alliance, it has to be a Night Elf. So that's how you can distinguish Demon Hunters. If they're not purple, they're Blood Elves.
Oh, interesting. I guess that makes sense. Okay. And then the only other thing I had here, there was a section attack on the Amani trolls. We had Zul'jin and Hexlord.
Yes, we glossed over that one, I'm afraid. So, as I said, the Amani trolls were kind of the major sticking point. It just so happened that when the elves built Silvermoon, they kind of built it on lands that were sacred to the Amani and the Loa and all that. So there was a lot of territorial disputes. Yeah, so the trolls are just like, colonizers! We want you out of here. And basically, the trolls previously had good relationships with the Horde, like several, troll clans, like the Darkspear tribe, led by Vol'jin, of course, became full-fledged members of the Horde. There had also been other people like Zul'jin, who had been allies or early leaders of previous versions of the Horde. But the Amani, led by Hexlord and Malakras, they became disgusted that the Horde had accepted their ancient enemy into their ranks. And so they were on this big quest in Zul'Aman to, we're going to capture Loa, and we're going to infuse their powers into our champions. Then we'll destroy both the Horde and the Alliance. And thankfully, Vol'jin was very against this idea because he was loyal to the Horde, and so he kind of spread word around that, hey, this there's these other trolls that are causing trouble. You guys might, Horde and Alliance, you might want to deal with it. And so that is a large dungeon known as Zul'Aman. This canonically happens before everyone goes through the dark portal into Outland. So this is kind of like the big thing that the elves were dealing with in terms of the troll threats before all of the demon Illidan and Kael'thas corruption stuff happened.
Oh, I had one final question for you.
Sure.
And I think that it was kind of towards the end, right? When fighting off against Kil'jaeden, and we see Kael'thas get corrupted and like various stages, but there was one picture that I saw where he's basically turned purple and he's got this big green like stone sticking out of his chest.
Yeah, that's like a fell crystal there, and
so what's
he's
the story? Because this is crazy. Like it. Let me see if I can find the picture. There. Look at that. That's
that's his appearance as a raid boss in the Sunwell Plateau raid, the one where Kil'jaeden is the final boss there. And so, yeah, that's where he says that Tempest Keep was merely a setback. Because, like, surprise, he's a boss again. But yeah, this is basically to show that, like, yeah, he kind of went down, but Kil'jaeden just infused a whole bunch more fell magic into him to make him even more powerful. And then, yeah, he goes down as a boss fight again. No problem. But yeah, so that's basically. I like to say it's his. It just screams to me like it's not a phase, Mom. And that's all I can think of looking at him. He honestly doesn't spend very long in that form. The only time you see him looking like that is in the raid where he dies.
Okay. Crazy.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it really is a tragic story because he was a really noble prince for a while, just wanted the best for his people, but he kept falling in with the wrong groups, abusive racist generals and allies who keep secrets from you, and eventually he's just like a demon lord says, I can help you. I understand you. And he's like, yeah, why not? Why not at this point?
At this point,
Everything.
Yeah.
Good call.
Everything can go wrong. Never sign deals with demons. It never works well.
Monkey paw curls.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for sharing the story of the Blood Elves with us. It's always fun to learn more and to hear about these iconic characters, and super cool. Thank you, Goliath. I appreciate it.
Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.